Ned and all
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
so
Yeah,
that's
I
why for
think
me it makes sense.
yeah, I think strategically it makes a lot of sense for you to be based there. That's no question. Yeah. Are you in touch with Holly? Because I mean I really miss
She
her. I
works
think
for
she was
me.
just
She's on our team now.
oh, I'm so glad. Oh, here's Sathya. Hi, Sathya. I'm so glad she's with you because she is such a wonderful, 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 wonderful human being and professional, of course.
Yeah, but it's only a part-time job. So she really
Mhm.
wants a full-time job. So
Mm.
I don't really have the money to pay her full-time. So I'm looking
Yeah,
to um, raise funds. And if I can,
yeah,
I'd love to have her full-time with us.
yeah. No, it makes sense. It makes sense. Absolutely. Um, and I think we're also waiting for Olu. Hopefully, he will be
He's
joining. I
here.
mean, oh, he's here? Okay,
Joining. Yeah, joining.
amazing. Oh, yeah, I see him. Okay, I see that Olu and Sathya are both here. Amazing.
Okay. So if you guys are ready, I can start letting people in, and then we can start in like 1 minute.
Sure.
Okay.
Hey Julia. Hey Elsa.
Hi.
Hey Olu.
Hi, Satya. How are you?
Doing very well, my friend. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks.
It's been so long, Elsa, since I've seen you.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
She's a world traveler like you, Satya.
She has always been the number one world traveler, and
Yes,
I come
yes.
nowhere close.
Yeah. I mean, in a group of overachievers, I mean, Elsa, I mean, yeah, she's right up there.
Most influential person, closely followed
Yes.
by our other friend, Olu. Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Hi, Olu. Hi,
Sathya, don't say
Olu.
that. I'm not that influential. You are the most influential person, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see you again. Thanks so much. Where's the big man, Carl?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna say a note about Carl in a second. So I'm just gonna give a couple of announcements and then we're gonna get going because we only have an hour. So let me get us started. So good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to the very first session of the final day of the Poverty Stoplight Innovation Week. It is honestly a real pleasure. I'm feeling really emotional and excited. It's a real pleasure to give you such a warm welcome to this last day with a conversation that is very, very close to my heart and my soul. A conversation that brings together different voices, in across the development space, different regions, different perspectives, surely, from across the social impact ecosystem around the world. And before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that we have simultaneous interpretation available in this session and indeed throughout all of the sessions of our Poverty Stoplight Innovation Week. So in order to activate interpretation, please do go find the interpretation icon, which you should locate it in the bottom Zoom toolbar on your screens. And then you just simply need to select the language that you like to listen to. Also, if in that same icon, if you like to suppress the original audio, then you will also find that feature right there. Entonces, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches a todos, dependiendo desde dónde se estén uniendo. Esta conversación realmente yo estoy súper emocionada, les quiero dar la bienvenida. Esta es una conversación que junta a diferentes personas, diferentes voces, diferentes regiones a lo largo y ancho del sector de desarrollo, del sector del ecosistema de impacto social mundial. Y quiero recordarles a todos que tenemos interpretación simultánea disponible en esta sesión y durante toda la semana de la Innovation Week. Para activar la interpretación simultánea tienen que ir al toolbar abajo mismo de su pantalla y encontrar el icono de interpretación, y entonces allí pueden seleccionar si quieren escuchar en inglés o en español. Y de hecho ahí también van a poder encontrar, si quieren suprimir el audio original, ese feature también lo van a encontrar en ese mismo icono de interpretación. Y antes de empezar, un último recordatorio. So before we begin, a final reminder, as we close this week, right, I would also like to highlight that the conversation that we have shared over the past few days since Monday are part of a much broader learning journey that we are having as the Poverty Stoplight global movement, right? The questions we have explored around technology, around data, around AI for sure, around leadership and poverty elimination, of course, human agency, right? All of these questions will continue in the upcoming Cerrito Forum, our very own annual gathering in our beautiful country, Paraguay. So for those of you who would like to learn more about Cerrito Forum, then please do get in touch. Maybe you would like to come along, maybe you'd like to participate, maybe you'd like to be a speaker, right? All of these things are possible. So do check out our website, cerrito.com.py, or do get in touch, right? Drop us a line at cerritoforum@povertystoplight.org. So we will also share all of these messages in the chat with the brilliant help of my colleague Wendy, who is commanding all of this session and indeed all of the sessions of the Innovation Week. Bueno, antes de empezar, obviamente, invitarles al Cerrito Forum 2026, donde vamos a continuar todas estas conversaciones maravillosas que hemos estado teniendo alrededor de datos, inteligencia artificial, florecimiento humano, liderazgo y, por supuesto, eliminación de la pobreza. Visita nuestra página web cerrito.com.py o si no, escríbanos a cerritoforum@povertystoplight.org. Y bueno, y mi colega Wendy, que es la comandante de todo este evento, está también compartiendo todos estos mensajes en el chat. Así es que ahora sí, I will now carry on entirely in English. It is my great pleasure, honor, and privilege to welcome our speakers for this Aspen Global Innovators Group Kitchen Table Conversation. Today, we are joined by Elsa da Silva from the Red Dot Foundation in India and Safecity. Also by Sathya, Raghu from Soul Forest and Kheyti, and with Oluseun. He is from the BudgIT Foundation, and he was already with us in a previous session on Monday. Thank you for being back, Olu. We were also supposed to be joined by Carl Mangan from Agra. However, Carl unfortunately has had an unforeseen emergency, and he won't be able to join us. However, Carl, we are sending our thoughts are with you. Do take care, my friend, and we will be in touch later for sure. So today, in this session, we will be exploring issues around gender justice, food security, civic technology, of course, financial inclusion, poverty elimination, climate resilience, drawing from our work across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and of course, global institutions. Our speakers, my dear friends, will reflect on the challenges impacting or shaping our sector, today, the innovations and the movements that deserve more attention, and of course, the leadership and the collaboration and the very imagination and curiosity that we need for the road ahead. Elsa, Sathya, Olu, thank you so much for joining me, for joining our Poverty Stoplight global movement. This really isn't meant to be a panel discussion at all. I want you to think of pulling up a chair around a kitchen table, no polished speeches, right? No PowerPoint, no AI, right? No pressure, just a chat among friends and colleagues, an honest conversation. We spent years together, mainly via WhatsApp, but eventually we're also able to get together in person every time. We are so lucky when that happens. And we're always thinking about how do we contribute, right? How do we make this a better world? And I know you all care deeply about this, but beyond care deeply, I know you are all working towards this every day. So you all have full permission to interrupt. Let's interrupt each other. Let's build on, what we're saying. So in order to get us all started, right? Let me see, what do I want to start with? But what's something, I guess a good opening question is, what's something that any of you have genuinely changed your mind about just in the last 5 years, right? In the last 5 years, what have you changed your mind about, right? I mean, Sathya, you are smiling, so please do not be shy, my friend. Get us started, right?
Thanks. Thanks, Julia. In all this, can't thank you enough. You feel a lot of joy and meaning into a lot of things that you do, and
Could
also
I ask perhaps the audience to mute yourself? Sorry, Sathya, I believe there's a bit of a interference, so please go ahead, my friend. Sorry.
no, I have to repeat this. Thank you for the joy and meaning that you feel into your work and also into all our lives. And thank you for having me and our fellows in this call. It's interesting that I was just talking about the same point earlier in the day with a friend that I met at about 7, 8 years ago, building Kheyti. I thought incentives and disincentives would be the way to change the behaviors. And I probably held on to that belief for almost 20 years. And there are no good people, bad people. There are good incentives, bad incentives. But increasingly in the last 4 years, 3, 4 years, I think, I've been thinking more about how our incentives are driven by our values and things that we value. And those in turn are dependent on the stories that we are told and that we believe. And that to me is a clear shift in a lot of things I do compared to what I used to work on and how I used to approach things. And incentives, I now realize, are a downstream tool to be able to operationalize something that we think is valuable in the context of the stories that we believe we resonate with. So that's one change that happened.
Thank you. I mean, Olu, you're looking so serious. I mean, how do you respond to that, right? What's the reaction? Because I mean, it's like your mind is going through 1,000 miles an hour, and what is, you're muted, and we want to hear you.
I think it's a very difficult question. So first of all, thank you for having us and also setting the tone for being a kitchen table conversation. I work on this issue of sexual and gender-based violence, which is, I feel, one of your basic rights, which often is not talked about for various reasons, right? And some days I feel like I am making progress, and some days I feel like there's no hope. So it's like a yo-yo. And if you read the newspaper and you read all the different stories, you feel like, gosh, am I even making a difference? And then the last 10 days I've been on the road. I brought two of my board members, young kids, 17-year-old and 16-year-old from the US who had never been to India. They are interns with us. So I said, okay, come witness India with me. So we went to Delhi, went for our workshops. Then I took them to Agra and Jaipur. Now we're in Goa. We went to some of our workshops over here and also met other nonprofits along the way. And I feel there's so much happening, and in some ways there's progress, and in some ways there is norm change. But in a lot of other areas, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I don't know, in the last 4 years or 5 years that I've been doing this, I mean, I've been doing this work now for 14 years. But post-COVID, I don't know whether the violence has increased or decreased, or we are just learning about it more. And yet, at the same time, being through North India, which is supposedly more, um, you know, more unsafe for women and girls, I did feel like men gave us space, in extremely crowded tourist spaces. Um, we weren't touched and groped, and we weren't uh, commented upon, right? Stared, possibly, yes, but it wasn't so intimidating as before. But then that's my experience. So, and we were talking about this all the time because one of my interns is a girl and one is a boy. So the boys' experience is totally different from the girls. So, but I like to ask everyone how are they feeling, how are they interpreting, what is the relationship? Like, we are always comparing in our minds to some other experience that we have, right? And so I feel, yes, there is some change happening, but we still have a lot of work to do. And I don't know whether we can solve this problem in my lifetime, but I'm trying. Yeah.
Thank you, Elsa, for your honesty. Yeah, we are not sure for sure if we're actually making progress or not. And I mean, Olu, you work at the intersection of technology and well, trying to bring justice and power to the regular individual walking the streets, right? So how do you see this?
I mean, when you talk of technology, sorry, is the question to me or to Olu?
So
No,
so
to
I
me.
was Olu, yeah,
And if you want to
yeah.
take it
Sorry.
up, but
Okay.
honestly, I mean, your point is also, I mean, also, Mary, your point was what was going through my mind after Sathya spoke about how impact is not linear. I mean, you want to say impact should go like a straight line, and when people trying to sell stuff, they feel like we sold two this year, so we'll sell six next year, then we'll sell 12 next year. It's like Nvidia selling supercomputers, and they feel like, oh, they sold this number last year, and that means we can project that they will do maybe 2x next year. But for some of you running an impact organization, you can make 10 steps, and today you feel, I'm excited, and we stepped forward. Government approved the work. We're going to move next. The next thing, the government, another new government comes over. The same government feels, I think we made the mistake. Then you go 5 steps backward again, and you feel like you have not even had motion, or even all the great work you've done, maybe like 6, 7, 8 years, begins to go down. I guess links back to what Saya is saying, that sometimes you feel like incentive will shape behavior, but it could be wide. The context could be much more wider about that. It could be norms. It could be people just clinging onto like old ideologies and biases. So even if you put all the money on the table and you all the carrot or the sticks on the table, they might not still follow you. So I guess in my head is first thing I'm learning is we require a lot of patience and a lot of resilience to be able to navigate the kind of environment that we have right now. And I think I mentioned that a little bit on Monday as well, that you need a bit of patience and impatience at the same time. You need a lot of pessimism and optimism at the same time. You need a lot of idealism and realism. You need hope, in the midst of all the despair as well. So I think running those two streams allow you to know that this will always take time. Because
Yeah.
obviously, if one thing I've learned is that impact is not a straight line. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, personally, the poverty stoplight is very much a bottom-up participatory tool. And I hear you, Elsa, right? Sometimes I am wondering, when there's more than one world going on in our world some days, right? You're wondering, are we making progress as a humanity, right? And I feel despair, but then I look back at our tool, our global movement, and we have members here with us this morning. And we have grown into we are now serving over 600,000 families, in 63 countries. And that gives me hope because every family that completes a stoplight survey is a family where I am hopeful, and my hope is building again. So before we move on to the, to the part of this conversation where we're going to talking about hope, is there something that in our sector, right, the international development sector, the social impact sector, is there anything in our sector that keeps you up at night that you think that we're not talking about enough, right? Is there something that we're not talking about enough? What would you respond?
I think we're not talking about funding enough and the need for funding. The thing is, I moved from the corporate sector to this sector. And initially, it took me a while to figure out, okay, how do you even raise money? And, honestly, people over here believe that if you want to do good, it should be done for free. And if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. This is a professional sector, it's doing
Mhm.
important work. And I believe in the age of AI and in the age where, we have trillionaires who want to spend so much of money to go to Mars. If we can't first sort out the problems on Earth, what are we talking about? We have enough money to eliminate poverty, hunger, gender-based violence, provide great health and education to everyone. Though we got our values all mixed up. I think Sathya spoke about values. We have our values mixed up. On one hand, there's innovation, fine. Innovation drives creativity, or creativity drives innovation, or necessity drives creativity and innovation. But what about carrying people along with you? I think that's true leadership. And we glorify these selfish people in the world who only are thinking about themselves, you know? And if we want to solve these problems, we have to invest in people in this sector who can dedicate their time and effort to providing the highest quality of service. How do we attract talent if we are not able to pay the salaries? And then let's not talk about funding where there's so many restrictions. It's only a single year funding, etc. And they believe like they are doing us a favor. Sometimes the grant is so tiny, but the paperwork is so huge that you wonder, why am I even getting, like, why have I accepted this money? It's not worth my time. So I think we have to rethink how philanthropy is carried out. A lot of people talk about trust based philanthropy, they don't walk their talk. You know, there are very few funders who really, really give you the money and let you trust you enough to do it the right way or the way that will have the maximum impact. And we already spoke about impact not being in the short term, but it takes years and years and years. And it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, we are okay for Elon Musk's rockets to fail, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
part of the
Mm-hmm.
process. Why can't we fail in
Mm-hmm.
the social sector? Why can't we try things out and give us that room for R&D, for development to see what works? You know, we don't have
Yeah.
all the answers. So I do believe that we don't talk enough about it and we don't challenge these people who think that they're doing us a favor.
Thank you, Elsa, for your passion. It reminds me of when in our fellowship year, the very first meeting, Sathya was asking all of us to take all of the masks off, right, Sathya? I mean, I'm sure you remember that moment. And um, Sathya, what would you say? What are we not talking about enough besides fundraising?
A point that Elsa, a great point. I would slightly see this differently, where it's not about people not being selfish, because as a human species, I feel we are quite primitive, and our capabilities to think about long term, our capabilities to understand the meaning of long term value are at a surface level. This is one of the realizations that I've been having more and more. So the missing piece somewhere is, how do we connect this awareness of, do we need uh, a lot safer environment for women and all genders to be able to feel safe in the world that we live in? Of course, yes. There's no. It's a no-brainer. It should be there. And her whole life she has been fighting to see how that can get established. Right now, there can be somebody working on regenerative agriculture because
Mm-hmm.
agricultural system continues to have its challenges, and every calamity is only exposing that more and more, be it COVID or the war, everything. I think the piece to me that is missing is connecting a lot of this narrative to our selfishness. How are we doing it for our own selfishness? Is it changing the language and building it around, say, infrastructure? Because infrastructure is long term. Infrastructure doesn't talk about a 5 year, 10-year timeline. Infrastructure talks about a 20, 25 years timeline a lot of times. So, should there be a change in the lens and the language for us to do this conversation? Because I feel we passionately in this, I'll still take the liberty to call this echo chamber by taking my mask off because we care about this. We are deeply passionate about these. But this has to translate to, hey, be selfish, but for long term, right? If you're selfish for short term, maybe you don't care about these problems as much. But if you actually are selfish for long term, you of course would care. You of course should care about these problems. So I also wonder if in this sector, we are connecting a lot of the solutions to human tribal instinct of selfishness better.
Wow. I mean, Olu, I'm not sure how you're going to respond, but I mean, we are quite primitive in saying, Sathya, we should maybe start thinking more long-term and changing the narrative along longer term. And maybe that will also help Elsa's previous point on fundraising and allowing the sector to fail, to fail honestly. And so what would you respond, Olu? What's your take on this?
I think I like Elsa Mari's point first on funding. Like, especially for young organizations, we underestimate how challenging it is for them to raise funding. People who do not have a track record, who are trying to break out, or who do not understand the legalese and the complexities and the fine language of fundraising, and also have not built maybe a record or a track record over time. I think it's getting much more difficult because we run Civic, which we are trying to, which will incubate young civic organizations and they do great stuff. They have great ideas, but to find funding, and I'm not talking like a lot of money, 50,000, 25,000, 100,000. It seems like quite challenging to find that kind of resources in recent times. So I think it's something that we have to figure out to look at. We're trying to challenge that by building something we call Air Fund, which is still in the incubation stage. I'll put the website in the chat. It's called airfund.africa, which we're trying to build. It's trying to find a way to spark innovations within secondary cities. And we're fundraising for it, and we're speaking to a few people. So in my head, I feel like we have to figure out a way to, when we have this AI age upon us. And I feel like on the private sector side, things are moving at a very stratified, at a very fast pace. But like on the civic impact side, it seems like there is still no momentum to be able to, track, to maybe push ideas where AI can actually be used for good. So we are interested. There's an AI for Good summit happening in Geneva this week. So which also tracks like we have to figure out a way to do that. The other part is also just human kindness. And I guess these days there's a bit of misunderstanding of how much the commons, the free unpaid labor, or maybe even citizens or non-profit organizations don't get paid for. And a lot of that is monetized into the corporate structure. And you will see like people like Google will take all our information, we put online, aggregate them and put it and had an ad manager around it, and they get paid thousands to sell ads, targeting, to use our own data to properly target. Or what ChatGPT and the cloud of this world are doing, go online, scrape as much as possible, even though some of them are in litigation against them, and take all that free labor and use that to even build their own investment stack. There was something that happened recently. Someone asked a question, asked Grok, Elon Musk, fantasy baby, some questions about Nigeria, which related to some data that we collect and at the very county level. And Grok said, I don't have an answer. I'll wait for when BudgIT shares more about this work. Then we refuse to share that reform information because we know once we tweeted that information, then Grok has an answer to that issue. Then somehow somebody went to our website, scraped that information, and tweeted it. The next thing, the person asks a question again, and we even asked the question, and Grok answers the question according to so and so now. And I'm like, okay, Elon Musk continues to demonize non-profit and says they are never doers, they continue to draw in from resources and they are like leeches on the system and all of that. But this is the common. This is the common fueling this supercomputer that you have built and giving it life and expanding its valuation. This is you taking tweets, freely written tweets of everyone on your on your platform and building a commodity around. And I guess somehow we're not being honest about that conversation in my own head about how it seems the input is socialized, but the output in some sort of way is capitalized. And I worry heavily about how long with that because it seems we're, AI is coming for everything. It's coming from the low-level jobs. It's coming, and robotics, and maybe by the time robotics, even the price point of robotics come very, very cheap. It now even comes for almost everything at the end of the day. But we're not asking ourselves, there's a lot that is also built on paid labor that we have aggregated into what we call Creative Commons. And I think that's also something that keeps me up at night as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Olu. And we've all raised, big worries. I'm not going to lie. I go back to, what you're saying, Olu, AI and how that is impacting everything. And obviously we are part of the world, our sector. And as, Sathya was saying, maybe are we too primitive? Should we lead with kindness and compassion, like Olu was saying, to be less primitive and more, right, more people-centered and not so self-centered. And Elsa, to your point, we should be allowed to fail more, right? Because we are doing important work. And I really do take that point that, we are a professional sector. I take that point to heart. But I really want to change the tone of the conversation because I don't want our audience to feel that we are pessimists. We are really not, because most of us have been doing this work for more than for close to 2 decades easily. And I know there's a lot of optimism inside each of us. So in order to make a bit of a pivot, I'm going to ask each of you to give me a micro story of the last time a community surprised you, right? What was the last time a community surprised you? Sathya, I'm seeing you jumping to go. Please tell us something.
You decided that I have to go and I have to go. um, so this is probably a year and a half ago when in one of our restoration projects, in a conversation with local communities, we started understanding how there were certain species which are a lot more native to certain area and how a few species which came from areas which are not basically some non-native species which have come into certain regions, how their ecosystems have changed. So this was not told in a sophisticated language, but here is the magical thing that I took away from that conversation. A lot of times when we approach the local communities with an intention to help, I think in the last 15 years, one of the most consistent things, including the insight from the local community identifying new species and recognizing as this is not native to us, is you will never go back regretting a conversation with a local community, at least 9 on 10, because they will have unsophisticated but super authentic ways to talk about what the problem is. And a lot of times, some direction of solution also. I saw that even with Kheyti, where people used to say, heat is increasing, pests are increasing, rains. Earlier, we used to, do our sowing as per the almanac, and now we are unsure when to do the sowing because we are unsure when the rains would arrive. So all these, they never use that word climate change. That's okay, right? But if we really listen with attentiveness, they have great insights. And I think the important point, it's probably consistent, is lead with, I think this is one of the things, I think John Gardner mentioned this. Don't be interesting, be interested, right? Be interested, and suddenly you'll find a world of things, world of insights that the local community can gift you, right? And yeah, so that is something
Thank you.
which I constantly feel whenever I talk to the local communities.
I love that. I love, I agree with you 1,000%. You field days and when we engage with the communities that we serve, that we work with, it's always precious time. A week ago exactly, a lady in the Philippines, we were doing field testing for the poverty stoplight, and this lady, she finishes her survey and she's looking at her results, and she looks at me and she says, this tool allows us to be honest, right? And and I'm almost crying, because that's exactly how I feel about my own stoplight survey, and 2 weeks ago, a lady in Tunisia, she finishes her survey, and she has smiles, right? And she goes, and I didn't ask her anything, and she goes, looking at her results, I know what I have, I know what I want, and I know how to try to get there. I know that I can change my life, and I know how to try to do that. And it was so simple, so beautiful. And I think you're completely right, Sathya. Elsa, Olu, what was the last time a community surprised you? What story do you have for us?
I mean, every day there's something or the other. You hear about a young person who's decided to take up a master's in urban planning because they attended a session that helped them understand how mapping violence, on our Safecity platform can help make spaces better. If you combine it with a gender audit of the space, if you include community voices and think of solutions. Um, and I think we are really building the next generation with skills and tools that they can use to make their own community safer. And then you hear about a girl in one of the villages where we have a project where, they don't, their school is not even in their village. They don't even have a dedicated school bus. Her father would accompany her to the bus stop, and then there would be a mini bus. And in any of our countries, these mini buses, if they are meant for 10 or 12, you'll have double the number of people over there. So these girls were crushed and pinched and groped. And can you imagine getting to school with that frame of mind? And none of these girls wanted to drop out of school, because what happens if they tell their parents? The chances are their parents are going to say, stop going to school. It's not important because you need to get married and we need to find you a good husband, from a good family. And you don't need this dishonor. And these girls have aspirations. They don't want to be homemakers. They want to be doctors, lawyers, astronauts, even. So, um, when we do our workshops and they realize that they are not alone, that they have the right to speak up, and that they don't have to also reveal their identity. They can take an anonymous data set of their experience, of their collective experience to their parents and demand for their own school bus. And then they got their own school bus. So I think stories like this. And then on the other hand, every International Women's Day, we have this program where we match senior women established in their careers with young girls from very vulnerable backgrounds, whether they are daughters of sex workers, slum dwellers, etc. And we've been running this program now for over 10 years, and I can see the difference, right? And this young girl, she attended this program. And I don't know if you're aware, but my pandemic project was writing these books called She Is, where I've been capturing the leadership journeys of women in different fields. And one of these scientists from the Baba Atomic Research Center, which is our nuclear facility, had invited these young girls to that facility to see the nuclear reactor and see how it works. And this girl, who was a mentee in one of the programs, came there. And at the end, when we were about to leave, um, my colleague pulled me aside and said, you have to hear this girl. She's crying. And this girl was crying. She must have been 14, I think. And she was crying because her parents were arranging her marriage. And she was like, this visit gave her the confidence to say, I don't want to get married. I want to first finish my studies, get a job as a beautician, set up my beauty parlor, and then get married. And so that means she needed more time, right? So, and her mentee was actually my co founder, Supreet. And Supreet and she worked together. They also invited her father to the discussions, negotiated for, postponement of the marriage. And through the whole process, over a period of time, today this girl has completed her studies. She's trained as a beautician, has her own beauty parlor, bought her own house or rented her own house. And the parents had a very difficult time with their son who was married. And now this girl has her parents staying with her. So she can provide them with a safe space. So you can see the whole cycle of empowerment, agency, only because they were able to have access to other women who had different lives, made different choices, and now have a reference point. And the more we do such things, the more we talk about it, the more we support each other, the more we mentor each other, show up for each other, I think it will make a big difference in the long term. And like we said earlier,
Yeah.
change doesn't happen in the instance. It takes time, it's
Yes.
patience, and it's
Yes.
different for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Elsa. My God, what inspiring story. And thank you for sharing that. Olu, when was the last time a community surprised you? And where in the world did that happen? Oh, you're muted.
You're mute, yeah. The most popular thing they ever said on Zoom. I would say Nigeria, obviously. We run a primary healthcare project called PHC Tracker, where we track primary healthcare centers at a very local level. And why sometimes people wait for government to fix basic things like light bulbs, broken doors, or maybe possibly they need like a small plastic bucket. I've seen where communities themselves do not wait for that length bureaucratic government process, and they bring their micro funds together to procure those things. And it brings me to like that sense of ownership. It doesn't still take away the fact that they care about accountability and getting government to do what's most important and the bigger things like, okay, they need to fix a leaking roof, they need to provide hospital beds, they need to, provide like the alternative power source, but that they would also believe that certain things they can be responsible for and they can be able to deliver. It's mind blowing. Through that project, we have seen like around 87, we tracked in 200 communities, 200 primary health centers, and we have seen around in 87 out of them, we've seen where communities by themselves aggregate resources together to be able to fix things. And for me, that sense of ownership, it's mind blowing and it's exciting. And I want to see more of that when it comes to our democracy, where
Yeah.
accountability, participation is not an abstract concept, but people tend to personalize it much more, and they believe that this is ours, this is for us, and we want to be much more involved and much more invested in it. And that level of investment and involvement in democracy is something that I want to see much more. And I feel like it's what our society needs. So I think that's it.
Oh my God, Olu, and I'm there with you 100%. And I think we all of us are, right? We really want to, yeah, we want to believe, we want to feel fueled by democracy, right? And by the promise of democracy. So thank you for that. And before we close, and I do have a final question before we open it up to the audience, because there's been questions already. A micro detour, because our brilliant Sathya did write a beautiful children's book, right? Soul Forest and the Children Who Heard the Earth's Secret. So a big shout out. But Sathya, honestly now, um, what I mean, I'm guessing that maybe your children inspired you to do this, because obviously you work for the earth and with the people that work, in the land every day. But I wonder, did writing for children teach you anything about communicating big ideas to adults?
Uh, Firstly, thank you, Julia, and also thanks for generously exploring the possibility to take this book into Spanish and hopefully other languages. So it took a lot of effort to get the book across continents, and I'm glad it reached. Right. Uh, Thank you. Of course, I think definitely the first part of what you said in terms of whether writing for children is something that taught me, which I couldn't otherwise teach to adults. The egos of adults come so much in the way. The book is written in such a way that in the process of teaching your children or nephews or whoever, whatever, whoever you're working with, somewhere the book is designed for two generations to sit together and read. In the process of teaching them, you actually learn more. And one of the most consistent things that I heard is adults having more aha moments. Um, well, I'll take the freedom to just share an interesting thing which happened as a consequence of that. One large school out of a city in India, they happened to read the book, and that founder happened to read the book with children, and they reached out saying, "We want to set up a school focused on nature and sustainability at Soul Forest." Now, that happens when adults move, and the gateway into that, the way I think we kind of used the popular strategy that many companies who want to sell consumer products first sell it through kids and we didn't do anything very different. You want to educate adults about nature, start with getting the mind share of children, and in the process you also start getting the mind share of adults. So yeah, this is a topic which I learned in the process of writing this book. Thank you, Julia. Thanks for bringing it up.
Thank
I
you.
didn't expect.
Thank you. It's a beautiful book, and Elsa, of course, you've been writing your book, and our wonderful Carl, who's not able to be with us, wrote a beautiful book on poetry, on how to grieve and how to do that through poetry. So a lot of writers in the group. I'm in the process of writing my own book, fingers crossed, and but a final prompt for each of you, right? As we open it up to the audience. Um, Finish this sentence, right? Because we want to leave everyone with a positive tone that I know ignites our work, right? So, despite everything, I still believe. Finish that sentence for me, please. Who's gonna go first? Olu, I see that you're ready.
Okay. Oh, Oliver, you're going?
I think
Satya should go first, please.
Satya is ready. Yeah, Satya is ready.
But everything, I do believe that humans have the capability to come together the moment we recognize that a crisis is short term, not long term. So I do believe that we can solve the problems.
Beautiful. Olu?
I do believe that human kindness is at the heart of every progress. And that kindness radiates in how we treat other people, how we treat the environment, and how we treat the entire ecosystem as well. It speaks to also how we care for each other, because understanding that in this shared humanity, we all need each one another. Yeah.
Beautiful. Elsa, what do you still believe in?
Um, I still believe that, we'll find a way. People, like
Mm.
has been mentioned, people come together, people support each other. We have to learn to ask for help. And, honestly, um, it is available. And people are, they do want to help each other. So, and in my line of work, I've seen that over and over again. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, that's beautiful. I personally still believe that if we go, yeah, home by home, with the intent of listening, really listening, I do believe we can, all of us, overcome our own, deprivations, the many different ways in which we can be poor with ourselves and with others. So thank you for this beautiful conversation. You gave me a lot to think about, but there are so many questions in the audience already. Let me try to tackle them. And thank you for those of you who engaged so thoroughly with today's session. Um, Let me see here. Well, a comment from Julia Donovan, who's saying, Elsa, the impossible will take a while. The author, Potawatomi, the botanist, U.S. indigenous person, Robin Wall Kimmerer, talks about planning and building a world 7 generation past ours. This is how the Potawatomi think about change and multi-generational change. Somehow, on my hardest days, this reminds me of what is possible for my children's children if I can just set them up for success and have faith. What a beautiful, beautiful comment. And she's also saying that she loves the idea of being able to fail more. Companies spend so much on research and development when in the nonprofit sector, we don't have the funding to really innovate, which makes it hard to change how systems work. We also don't have the funds to really evaluate if our programs are working. Compounded with the idea that not everything is countable, nor should it be, meaning the direct impact on individual people is felt, not counted. What a beautiful reminder. Absolutely. We know it in our hearts. We feel it. We see the micro changes happening. Thank you, Julia, for engaging so authentically with our conversation this morning. And we I have another comment saying, thank you so much for your ideas. My follow-up question is, how can development initiatives address not only the symptoms of gender inequality, but also the structural and institutional barriers that perpetuate poverty among women and girls? I mean, Elsa, this has Elsa written all over it, this question. So if you want to take it. From Madagascar, by the way.
I think it's constant conversations, right? For example, we don't just have a tech platform for reporting. We accompany it with a lot of education and awareness on uh, harmful gender norms. What are your rights? What is the law? How do you file a formal complaint? Strategies for bystander intervention without putting yourself at risk. If you don't want to complain formally, how do you use Safecity, which is an anonymous platform for reporting, and then how do you use that data for your own advocacy? That is on one hand, right? But with funders and institutions, so we are working with police, educational institutions, transport, city governments, mayors' offices. They are so busy and inundated with their own work. They don't have the time and they don't have this data, nor are they making any efforts to receive the data. But once they have the data, they can't unsee it because we are making what is currently invisible visible. So now they are forced to think about what is their role in prevention of gender based violence, how can they make spaces safer, and how can they adjust their own resources or the protocols to do that. So we have the police going to the community in plain clothes. We have them having sessions regularly with the community to build trust because trust is a big issue. Lack of trust is why people don't often report, right? And they're scared of the police. But then with the data, you can also use other resources better, like your CCTV cameras for prevention rather than response. So it's a slow process, but I think once people understand that everyone has a role to play in creating a safe environment, it'll be much better. And also, we forget that all of us are part of the same social milieu where the harmful gender norms and stereotypes exist. So a policewoman, for example, may also be a domestic violence victim in her own home. So is she then going to be empathetic to a survivor who comes to make the complaint in her police station? You know, so yeah. So I think it's a process that we've embarked on. It's interesting. The more I do this work, it's like a Pandora's box. There's so much work to be done at from every angle, right? Um, yeah, and the intersectionality of it. I think Sathya earlier spoke about uh, regenerative farming. One of the states in India just said that they're going to recognize that women are also farmers, because the bulk of farming is done by women. But when you ask somebody who's a farmer, they'll think of a man, you know. And yet, in my state in India, Maharashtra, swaths and swaths of villages have women of childbearing age have their uteruses removed consensually because they have been brainwashed to believe that it's in their own interest. And why? Because they don't want these women taking maternity leave, period leave, etc. And they don't want to give them that break, because when you go to the loo, you're going to take a longer break than a man goes when he wants to do his business. So I think at the end of the day, on our part, we have to challenge it from all angles because it's not a straightforward issue. Understanding the local context is so important, which is why individual stories are extremely important.
Yeah, thank you, Elsa. Thank you for that answer. I received another question. I think it's a really good one. So this is for any of you who would like to take it. I think it's because we've been talking about funding, right? But the question is pretty good. If funding disappeared tomorrow, right? What's the one thing you would keep doing no matter what? I mean, who's gonna take that one? So if funding goes tomorrow, what are you gonna keep doing no matter what?
I mean, I think I can take a start, but I won't stop speaking against corruption, abuse of public resources. I won't stop holding government accountable. I think it's not just about the funding. And I guess even I look at our books now as budgets. Nobody funds us to do that anymore. Like when I mentioned how transparency, accountability was a big deal pre-COVID. And now after COVID, donor priorities shifted significantly. And for me, I feel like we still figure out a way to continue to put the fire on. So, regardless of funding or no funding, the idea of holding government accountable, demanding more effective service delivery, ensuring that people get social justice when it comes to public resources, I don't think that's tied to funding. I even feel like because we do that, we don't even get enough funding because people believe, oh, they are anti-government, they don't work with government, we cannot bring them to certain rooms and all of that. I don't care. My primary responsibility is to the citizens, that the citizens must be awakened and must be informed, must be enlightened to hold government accountable. So, irrespective of how unprofitable it is in quotes, I just don't want to stop doing that. Yeah.
That's beautiful, Olu, and thank you for your deep belief, right, in your work, no matter what. And what you're saying is that first and foremost, your work is for the people, right? Just like democracy is for the people. And so thank you for that important reminder. Elsa is saying that she would continue to do the same work. Obviously, more funding enables her to reach more people. So the last question that came through, I'm going to give it to Sathya because we're running out of time, and Elsa and Olu engaged just so beautifully just now. The question that we received, Sathya, is it's a pretty good one too, I would say. What's the one question you wish donors asked more often?
I wish donors or any funders asked the organizations how the individual and their teams are doing before talking about metrics. And this work is hard. A lot of times these are lonely journeys too, right? And we subscribed fully knowing that it will be such, but sometimes we underestimate the order of magnitude of challenges that come our way. Not even 10% of awareness about what we are subscribing to. Sometimes we jump into these. So before talking about metrics, goals, promises, progresses, can the first 10 minutes of conversation just be about individual? Um, the whoever the leaders are, the core team, all of that. I think that changes and gets people to see this work and the organizations in a lot more nuanced manner, and probably also get greatest value for the money that they're putting on the table, right? If if Elsa is not doing what she's doing, there aren't 25 people waiting out there to do her work, right? That's very clear. So
Yeah,
considering that
yeah,
she is the asset, right? So
yeah.
considering that, are we taking enough care of these individuals who are doing this? And yeah, I think that's the question that I would ask.
That's beautiful, and we have people in the audience who are in touch with funders, and hopefully the message will, will get to them. And thank you, Sathya. I think it goes back to something Olu was saying earlier around compassion, right, and kindness. There should always be, room for compassion and kindness. And we are just humans at the end of the day, all of us in this sector, right? We have our hopes, we have our dreams, we have our lights, we have our shadows. And it's sometimes it can feel lonely. There are days when I go home crying for sure. And there are days when I feel at the top of the world because I am, because someone just said something beautiful to me, or I'm seeing someone that had no teeth, give me a full smile, and being so radiant, in her own body. And it's really, it's the most amazing feeling in the world. So thank you so much for each of you. Thank you for the work that you do. You are not alone, right? There's a lot of people with you that, we still believe. I know that. I know it in every fiber of my being. And thank you, really. I appreciate each of you. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for the audience for engaging with beautiful questions. A final reminder, we have the closing ceremony of our Innovation Week um, in an hour's time. We'll have the esteemed Professor Naila Kabir from the London School of Economics and Political Science talk to us about the interface between gender, poverty, and empowerment, a conversation not to be missed. So do check it out. It's open to everyone. Thank you so much, Sathya, Elsa, Olu. Um, um, a lot of love from Paraguay to each of you. Thank you for our audience. Thank you for engaging with us so thoroughly. And yeah, hope everyone finishes the week in high spirits. Bye. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Olu. Bye.
So much.